Hello everyone, what is up? It is me, AlbyMTG, and for today's video we'll be taking a look at 5 modern decks that are getting greatly improved due to new cards being printed in Guilds of Ravnica. Again, you guys already know I'm extremely excited about this set, and it's helping out one of my favorite formats, which is the modern format. So of course I want to get a chance to talk about this. We don't have the full spoiler quite yet. We're actually only about halfway through the spoilers right now, but most of the remaining cards are just basic commons and uncommons that most likely won't do anything. You can see we're 153 out of 259 in terms of spoiled cards so far, so we've still got about 100 more cards left to see, but like I said, most of them are just going to be commons and uncommons. Maybe they'll end up, doing additional things in Modern as well, but for the time being, we're going to take a look at 5 cards that are improving some of, not necessarily my favorite Modern decks, but 5 Modern decks that I think are generally pretty good, but are just getting the additional boost now to where they could become just insane. Maybe not so insane for some of these decks. We are going to be looking at 2 decks that are considered to be Tier 1, and then we're looking at 3 decks that are considered to be Tier 2 or below. Tier 1 being the decks that you can expect to, whenever you're playing at an event that's competitive REL or professional REL, these are the kind of decks that you can expect to see a high percentage of players playing these sort of decks. And then the Tier 2 decks are the kind of decks where people know they exist in the format, but generally they're just not quite as good as the Tier 1 decks. They don't put up the same results, and there's not quite as many people playing these lists. So we're going to go ahead and just go down here through Mythic Spoiler, and as we get to the cards that are improving these new decks, I'll go ahead and point them out, and we'll go ahead and talk about them. So here in the beginning, we don't really have too much. We go past the Locket Cycle here, and then we do reach the first one right here. We actually reach the first 2. So the first one showing up here is Deafening Clarion. Deafening Clarion is 3 mana, 1 red, white for a sorcery. Choose one or both. Deafening Clarion deals 3 damage to each creature, or creatures you control gain lifelink until end of turn. The deck that this is going to improve is the Boros Nahiri decks, also known as Sun and Moon sometimes. And the big replacement that this will be, that the Clarion will be going in for, is Anger of the Gods. This is a deck that has to run a lot of white sources because it's focusing on playing Blood Moon, and so you can see here in the mana base, a third of its mana base is just basic plains, and so needing double red for Anger of the Gods can sometimes be an issue for this deck, so this will make it much more consistent that they'll be able to cast their board sweeper on 3, and then as well, the deck does just play some cards like Gideon Jura, which can turn into a 6/6 creature. There's also some lists that play Gideon of the Trials as well, which can turn into a 4/4 creature, and then you're also playing Emrakul the Aeon's Torn in this list to go along with the Nahiri the Harbinger. So sometimes giving lifelink, to your Emrakul can be insane. Giving lifelink to your 6/6 can just be a good little swing, and then giving lifelink to your 4/4 if you're playing Gideon of the Trials can also just be very good as well. So it's going to make the mana much more, or it's going to make it much. The board sweeper is going to be much easier to cast in this deck compared to what it is currently. And we're also going to see that sometimes the deck will just steal wins away because of getting in additional damage with Planeswalkers or Emrakuls that now have lifelink for a turn. So that takes us to our second card here on the list, which is Assassin's Trophy. I've had an entire video about this before, but the deck that this is going to improve is all of the BG or BGX decks in Modern. We're talking about things like Jund, Abzan, and Sultai, as well as one of my favorite decks right now in the format, Black Green Rock. I've already talked about Black Green Rock enough on the channel, so I chose to put Jund here as kind of your basic list for this, because it is the deck that's BG or BGX that does make up the highest percentage of the Modern meta right now. If you're seeing someone playing BG or BGX, you can expect it to be Jund most likely. And so even just looking at this first sample list here, what I can expect to see here from this list is this one Dreadbore and this one Abrupt Decay both become Assassin's Trophy. They basically do the same thing that Abrupt Decay and Dreadbore are trying to do, except much better. Also, I forgot to mention what Assassin's Trophy did in case you guys didn't, catch my previous video here. Assassin's Trophy is an instant that says destroy target permanent an opponent controls. Its controller may search their library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle their library. I apologize for not reading that out at first, but going back here to the Jund list, I can expect to see that card replacing the 1 Abrupt Decay and the 1 Dreadbore in this person's list. And then even if we go to the sideboard, the Crumble to Dust here in the sideboard can most likely just be replaced with another copy of Assassin's Trophy in the sideboard as well, in case that person wanted to run 3 in their 75 instead of 2 in their 75. The card is going to be quite good and is going to allow decks like Jund to sometimes take matches off of Tron, which normally Tron would just be, a free win, or Jund versus Tron is just a free win for the Tron deck. It's basically like 80% for the Tron player to win, 20% for the Jund player to win, and I might even be a little too lenient there. It might be closer to 90-10 instead of 80-20. But now with Assassin's Trophy, we're going to see significantly more Jund upsetting Tron in different matchups, and I think this is going to be quite the big push for playing black-green decks in Modern, like the Rock, like Sultai, like Abzan, and like Jund. Again, we'll go on here to the next card here as we scroll down the list of spoilers, and the next card we have here is Knight of Autumn. Knight of Autumn is 1 green white for a Dryad Knight. You get a 2/1. When it enters the battlefield, you choose one. You either put 2 +1/+1 counters on it, you destroy target artifact or enchantment, or you gain 4 life. And so basically what this card is going to be either a Reclamation Sage when it enters the battlefield. It's going to be a Kitchen Finks when it enters the battlefield. Kitchen Finks being a card that, over the course of time, gains you 4 life, it gains you 2 life, and then gains you 2 life again, while Knight of Autumn would just give you the 4 life right away for the matchups that you're looking for life gain, so like aggro decks, burn decks, that kind of stuff. Or it can just be a 3-mana 4/3. There are only 2 3-mana 4/3s ever printed in Magic that have upside and not downside. Prowling Serpapard being one of them, and then Knight of Autumn now being the second one, if you consider this to be a 3-mana 4/3. So this card is going to be fantastic in Modern because it's so versatile. It does whatever you need it to do depending on the matchup. And so the decks that are really looking to play this are the Collected Company decks, because Collected Company cares about you hitting cards that are 3 converted mana cost or less, and Knight of Autumn fits perfectly into that category. Here this is Bant Nightfall, but falling into a similar category would be something like Green-White Value Town as well, which would definitely want to be playing the Knight of Autumn as well. It's just going to be the perfect card for these creature-based decks, especially the Collected Company ones where you can just get in there at instant speed. And then it just does so many good things. If you need a good attacker, you have a good attacker. If you need a Rec Sage, you got a Rec Sage. And then if you need the life gain, you've got the life gain. So again, we could see it seeing play in the main board potentially, but then possibly even in the sideboard, replacing things like Reclamation Sage, maybe even replacing something like this Qasali Pride Mage as well, because its goal is to destroy a target artifact or enchantment. So you might see Qasali Pride Mage leaving these decks as well. So it's just going to be a fantastic card in Modern. Again, we'll scroll down here, and the next one we're going to hit is Mission Briefing. Mission Briefing is a very good card. The card is absolutely fantastic. 2 blue mana for an instant, surveil 2, then choose an instant or sorcery card in your graveyard. You may cast that card this turn. If that card would be put into your graveyard this turn, exile it instead. So originally my thought process for this video was Mission Briefing was supposed to go with Blue Moon. Blue Moon is the kind of deck that would really benefit from having copies 5 through 6. We'll say you could play 8 copies of Snapcaster Mage essentially, but copies 5 through 6 would really be what we would probably be seeing with Mission Briefing in Blue Moon. It's the kind of deck that could, just greatly benefit from having additional Snapcaster Mages. But as I thought about it a little bit more, there's a deck that we haven't seen in quite a while. However, one of my friends at my LGS plays this deck. It's kind of like his pet deck. It's one of his favorites to play. And then fellow YouTube content creator over on Orcs Head Magic, one of the guys from that channel, also put together this deck recently, and so it got me thinking, and this card fits perfectly into that archetype. And that archetype is Mono Blue Living End. Mono Blue Living End was something that was cool for about 20 minutes about a year ago, and then basically fell off the face of the earth, and now it could end up seeing a little bit of a resurgence, probably not, but this card fits so perfectly in Mono Blue Living End. So what Mono Blue Living End is trying to do is trying to get out an As Foretold on the table, and then using As Foretold to cast the 0 mana Living End for free. That way you can return all creature cards from your graveyard to the battlefield and remove all the creatures from your opponent's side of the battlefield, so you have cyclers to help fill up your graveyard. Architects of Will, Curator of Mysteries, Drift of Phantasms has Transmute, but it still ends up going into your graveyard. Street Wraith, again, another card with cycling that you can put into the graveyard. Some lists even play Strive Riverwinder as well, here being another good card for this deck. And so you're trying to return those to the battlefield in just like one turn, and then just basically killing your opponent quickly. But in order for you to do that, you have to stay alive long enough, which is why you're running cards like Cryptic Command, Mana Leak, Remand, Supreme Will, these kind of cards that are trying to play a little bit more of a control-y game so that you can stay alive long enough to put together your combo. Then again, trying to find your combo is the important part. Trying to find As Foretold plus Living End. Even if you can find As Foretold plus Ancestral Visions, then you can draw 3 cards and look for your other combo piece, again doing like looking for the Living End, doing something like that. So if we go back and we take a look in Mission Briefing, you Surveil 2. So it digs you for your combo pieces. The Living End, it digs you for the Living End, digs you for the Ancestral Visions if you want to draw cards, digs you for whatever you need in the given scenario. Find your As Foretolds as well. If you don't want the cards and you hit creatures instead, you want to have creatures in the graveyard anyway to bring back with the Living End. So if you like the top of your deck is 2 Curator of Mysteries, you just put them in the graveyard. You don't really care. And then at the same time, this is the kind of deck that can't really play Snapcaster Mage, but would love to have the Snapcaster Mage effect to be able to cast things like Remand again, cast things like Mana Leak again. So this card does exactly what Mono Blue Living End wants it to do. It helps you dig for your combo pieces and helps you stay alive long enough by allowing you to recast these extra spells. It does exactly what the deck wants to do. It's just so perfect for it. And I think that if we're going to see Mono Blue Living End come back for another 15 minutes of fame, it'll be because of Mission Briefing coming back. And then that takes us to our final one. We just have to find it in here. I believe it's down towards the bottom. And right here, we have another card, Nullhide Ferox. This is 4 mana for a 6/6 with hexproof, with the downside being you can't cast non-creature spells. Then for 2 mana, Nullhide Ferox loses all abilities until end of turn. Any player may activate this ability, so your opponent can activate it to remove the hexproof, or you can activate it to remove the fact that you can't cast non-creature spells. And then it also has the upside of if a spell or ability an opponent controls causes you to discard Nullhide Ferox, put it onto the battlefield instead of putting it into your graveyard. So Nullhide Ferox, if they make you discard it with something like a Liliana of the Veil Tick-Up, if they for some reason this is your opening hand is Nullhide Ferox and 6 lands and they thought seize you, then boom, you get a turn 1 Nullhide Ferox. Another important interaction is with Burning Inquiry against Hollow One. Those cause you to discard 3 cards at random, so your opponent doesn't really have the choice of, oh, I don't want him to discard this Nullhide Ferox. It's random. They could end up with, some 4/4s in play because of their Hollow One. You could end up with some 6/6s in play because of your Nullhide Ferox. So it's a very good card in those matchups. And so I think that the deck that really wants Nullhide Ferox is going to be Mono Green Aggro. This is a deck that we haven't really seen too often, but did get a very, very big addition to it, which was Steel Leaf Champion coming out. Being able to go and cast the Steel Leaf Champion as a 3 mana 5/4 with a little bit of evasion tacked onto it is just incredible. The list that we're looking at here actually runs more instant and sorceries, so this is the kind of deck that would probably be hurt a little bit by the not being able to cast non-creature spells a little bit more. But in most typical mono green aggro decks, you'll see the Aspects of Hydras and you'll see the Rancors. Vines of Vastwood and Dismember aren't really cards that you generally see in the main board. Dismember tends to be more of a sideboard card, and then Vines of Vastwood generally doesn't tend to make the final cut, but it looks like this person was really big on it and enjoyed their their ability to just like steal games with free pump spells essentially. And so I think that what this deck is really lacking is good mid to late game, and mid to late game being like drops 4 through 6, we'll say. Right now in this list, the only thing that costs more than 3 mana would be this Thron the Last Troll, for example. And so I think adding in some additional power into the later game for this deck, maybe if you don't get to kill them right away with Dryad Militants or Experiment ones, then you're gonna want something to have some power in the late game to still push some damage through. And I think Nullhide Ferox is the perfect card for this. You're running enough lands to where you don't have to worry about not being able to cast it as well. 4 mana is very reasonable. Later in the game, a hexproof target becomes fantastic for Ronus the Indomitable as well. If you're activating that ability, giving +2/+0 and trample to your 6/6 hexproofer is pretty disgusting to think about. So we can just kind of imagine, essentially, we'll go -4 Vines of Vastwood, +4 Nullhide Ferox, maybe find, we might even play these 2 Dismembers, like cutting 4 instants and sorceries makes it, what, 8, or no, makes it 2 and 4 is 6 and 9, so that's like 1/6 of your deck is non-creatures. That's not even like too bad, but I think maybe you would want to cut some number of Dismember, maybe run like 1 Dismember instead of 2 possibly, but you guys can kind of see where I'm coming at, just making this deck much more creature based and having some additional ability to have good powerful creatures in the mid to late game, while stealing games sometimes from people who are playing Liliana of the Veil, and stealing games from people who are playing Hollow One and making you Burning Inquiry to discard your cards at random. So again, these are 5 decks that I think have the potential to improve quite a decent amount due to cards being printed in Guilds of Ravnica. Again, we'll talk about them one more time. Bant Nightfall / any collected company deck, really, green-white as well. Jund, as well as any other black-green deck that gets access to Assassin's Trophy. Boros Nahiri, also known as Sun and Moon. Mono Blue Living End, which again is kind of like my sleeper call on this one. Not a lot of people even remember Mono Blue Living End exists, more or less saying that it's getting improved, but I think that Mission Briefing is just perfect for what Mono Blue Living End wants. And then finally, Mono Green Aggro in Modern being the final deck here. So again, let me know your thoughts down low in the comment section. What other decks do you think are being improved via cards from Guilds of Ravnica? If you're excited for the set, be sure to let me know as well. If you guys are thinking about picking up any of these decks, maybe the Bant Nightfall one, that's a very fun one that I enjoy playing. Mono Blue Living End, possibly. Mono Green Aggro is also a fun one, and fairly cheap as well, at just about $150 here, which is like significantly lower than if we take a look at Jund, which is like $2,000. So Mono Green Aggro, for maybe some of you players who are trying to get into Modern without spending, an arm and a leg, Mono Green Aggro might be a deck for you. That might be something you want to look into. So, with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching the video, and I will see you guys here next time for another Magic the Gathering video. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video, where I talk about 5 modern decks that are getting improvements from new Guilds of Ravnica cards. Of course, at the end of all of my videos, I love to give a huge shout out and thank you to the 5 patrons who are helping improve the quality of the content here on this channel, and that is Jayathy Swaran, Daniel, Jeremy, BadWolfMTG, and Jason. They're supporting me over on the Patreon page, and again, I'm extremely, extremely appreciative to all 5 of you. You guys are fantastic, fantastic people, and I wouldn't be able to do this without your help. So thank you guys so much for just helping me over there. And thank you guys so much just for watching this video as well. Even if you're not supporting me on the Patreon, you don't need to feel obligated to donate ever. I just super appreciate you guys just, watching the videos and being here long enough to, if you're listening to this, it's crazy that you're willing to listen to me talk about the game that I love for this long. So it's insane. And again, I appreciate all of you. Thank you so much.